We have breaking news out of Buffalo, New York. The Bills have both hired two of their new coordinators, including a third in their special teams coordinator, Pete Carmichael Jr., somebody that we focused on in our last live video with me and Zbot. Check that out. I appreciate everybody being here. Like and subscribe for more amazing content. But we have hired Pete Carmichael Jr., a guy that has pretty much spent his entire coaching career under the Sean Payton coaching tree. So that was a huge new decision from the Buffalo Bills. He is a guy that was really close with Joe Brady. I thought it was a very high likelihood that if he was to tap into somebody with a little bit of familiarity, it would be Pete Carmichael Jr. He is somebody that has not only not gotten all the credit for some of those really, really good Drew Brees teams, he was said to have a major play out of those New Orleans Saints offenses. Look at what's been turning around in Denver. They fired Joe Lombardi, however, still kept Pete Carmichael Jr., which tells me that he was really the sounding board of getting the most out of Bo Nix in Denver after going with Sean Payton as well. So Carmichael Jr. is a very good hire with a lot of great experience and somebody that I think can do whatever Joe Brady needs. It's funny that he kind of went away from Sean Payton in his coaching hire, which seemed to be like he could have been placed in the offensive coordinator role in Denver, but it does seem like Davis Webb is their up and comer there that should receive that position out of Denver. So a really good first hire. I really think it's somebody that comes in with experience, knows play creation, knows design, knows how to get his most out of his players, has led a top flight offense, can severely help Joe Brady in a lot of ways on the offensive side of the ball. He can trust him to run meetings, trust him to make personnel decisions, some of the things that you're expecting from the offensive coordinator, who Joe Brady can't be. A lot of times I get asked, well, Joe Brady's calling plays anyways. Does it really matter? Well, even look at Grant Udinski out of Jacksonville, a coach that had a lot of buzz this coaching circle around this time around in the coaching segment. He was somebody that was super, super thought of and also is somebody that didn't call plays. So I think that that's kind of the misconception. They're doing a lot of stuff. They're not only helping game plan, they're helping run the rooms. So there's a lot involved with the offensive coordinator position that isn't just play calling. So a lot of times they're like, well, didn't the Bills want to hire a CEO in Joe Brady? They did. However, part of that was you're calling the plays on game day. That doesn't mean the offensive coordinator has a huge part of what goes on inside of the building on game week and thinking about his matchups and how he can help and what kind of play structure and what players may be improving in practice, who deserves more snaps. There's a lot that goes into the offensive coordinator that absolutely needs somebody with a lot of experience to be running the charge. And the Bills felt very high and very excited to have Pete Carmichael Jr. Probably my favorite name that wasn't a high end, like 1 or 2 year and done kind of guy, like a Davis Webb or a Ryan Shieldhouse, there's a couple of really good examples across the league. I think that those guys are the next coaching hires in the next tree. So I don't think the Bills, Carmichael has proven to be someone that's pretty loyal, who can stay in a coordinator-only position. So I think that's the kind of stability that the Bills are looking for and what they're able to do out of the offensive coordinator position. I don't believe that we're looking, there's a lot of good things from Davis Webb, but he's probably a head coach in 12 to 24 months. And the Bills felt for continuity purposes after making these moves already. Pete Carmichael has as long as he's successful, has every right to be kind of ride the offensive coordinator position. And maybe earn himself a head coaching role down the road, but he's never really gone that route. So I think that's what was enticing to the Bills, that he loves this position, kind of like a Steve Spagnuolo of the defense. He's kind of that version of the offense. So I think that ultimately that played a big role, and not necessarily, okay, Brian Daboll went and jumped to the Giants and kind of looking for that. Even Joe Brady was probably getting one of these open jobs, in my opinion, even though it didn't feel like that at times. I think that it was easily now Kubiak in Las Vegas after Joe Brady took the Bills job. But I do think it was neck and neck. He had that second interview. I don't think anything was for sure not going to go his way. So he may even be a head coaching this circle in terms of what was going on around the league. So Joe Brady has hired Pete Carmichael Jr., move that had been announced yesterday. And then, furthering more today, I think the ability to get somebody like Jim Leonhard, one of the hottest up-and-coming defensive coordinator candidates, somebody who feels like he's been calling plays, who seems like he's been a top-flight defensive coordinator in this league, even if he's just the pass game coordinator, defensive pass game coordinator underneath Vance Joseph in that Sean Payton tree. So now we have multiple coaches coming over from Denver, so we'll have to check. We'll make videos and we'll kind of bring content on who are they going to target out of that Denver tree to run both on offense and defense, possibly with basically the two coaches. And I expect maybe one or two more to come over now that both of the coordinators come from Denver. Sean Payton is going to have a tough offseason of losing coaches after having a pretty successful season, making it to the AFC Championship game. Probably should have won if it wasn't for snow and a backup quarterback. However, as Bills fans know, things happen in the playoffs. New England is on top for that reason. But as you continue to look through the Sean Payton coaching tree, Joe Brady has continued to put himself in charge of what he feels is where he stems from, not necessarily the Sean McDermott style of tree. Another big move also coming around these lines is you get a disciple of Aaron Kromer. You can't replace Aaron Kromer with Aaron Kromer. As much as I'd love to do that, there is going to be some, quote unquote risk, I guess, with literally any, whether it was Austin Gunn, I guess would have been someone and could still be on the staff as a run game coordinator, offensive run game coordinator. There are still positions that you can use Austin Gunn for if you really feel like, he has earned the right to be here. So I think that there's a lot that you can go over with some of the current coaches on the staff, but you had to make a decision at the O-line coach. And there's no better way to know that than to bring back somebody who's familiar with this entire system. And I think that that's the way that they had to go here, getting an offensive line coach who, in my opinion, was a pretty well-respected offensive line coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's done a lot of good things in his career, in my opinion, and that's Pat Mayer. He had top flight. We went over this last live video, but he had some top flight pass metrics. In my opinion, I think he finished third in pass block composite rating. Once again, anybody in the top 5, top 10 is not available at the moment. Usually it's very rare to get somebody that is that high end and able to do those things. But the Bills got the next best thing in Pat Mayer, and I think he's going to be able to be somebody who's going to be able to utilize this offensive line talent. So that was super cool to get that coach out of the way. And then as you continue to look for more coaches, who stays on the staff? The Bills have kept nobody on this staff right now. Absolutely nobody. So that's very, very telling. If they don't keep like a Rob Boris, possibly a Austin Gunn or a Ronald Curry, I think that there's something to be said that Brady sold, that we're going to overhaul everything, not because I don't like anybody, not because I don't get along with anybody. In fact, I do. Probably the fact that we want to prove that we want to have all new voices inside, beside myself, who, Josh endorsed clearly, and the rest of the ownership groups have seen that I'm able to be a CEO. And that's really how he got this position. And that's alignment and that CEO. Those are all the terms, is how he got this job, not necessarily his third down screens. That is not necessarily what earned him this job, even though first metrics in a lot of different things, EPA, there's a lot of different metrics that point to him as, once again, Joe. If his name was Joe McVay, he would have been the hottest coaching cycle coach in the circle this session around, whether it was even last year or this year, he would have been the number one person. But a lot of people are probably giving that Brian Daboll's stigma of it's just Josh Allen, it's just Josh Allen, it's just Josh Allen. Well, he's so far the only one that has made Josh Allen rein it in a little bit, no turnovers, MVP style, number one rusher in the NFL, number one rushing team in the NFL, number one offensive line in the rush. At some point, you get credit for some of that. And in my opinion, Joe McVay would have been the number one coach, just change his last name, would have been the number one wanted coach by every single team in the league. But being behind Josh Allen is kind of similar to maybe being from a Sean Payton tree where he calls the plays or but it works out for McVay. He calls plays, and anybody under his tree has gone on, and we've had some success stories from that Shanahan McVay tree down the line. So it doesn't necessarily mean anything, but I think that Joe Brady had the stigma of, okay, Ken Dorsey struggled. He was kind of an advanced metric merchant at times, but I think Ken Dorsey played into the metrics more than anybody else has in Buffalo. and he knew what he was doing in terms of how to make those metrics look good, even though they didn't match the eye test a lot of the time. And then you have obviously Brian Daboll and being a really good offensive coordinator. I know the Titans fans are very happy. They're very pumped about that, but ultimately wasn't a good CEO, in my opinion, of between fighting with assistant coaches and trying to pull his young quarterback out of concussion protocol. I thought were very questionable decisions later on in his tenure for Brian Daboll. So let's talk a little bit more about the man of the hour, the man of the day, in Jim Leonhard, a former Buffalo Bill. Now, that is something that, you don't say much that goes on to become a coordinator. That's very cool to see. He's ran those really great Wisconsin defenses. Has been given a lot of credit for the development of a lot of different players across the league from those Wisconsin teams. And, as you develop into the defensive coordinator of the year, it really feels like he's been a top flight defensive coordinator in this league. And then you remember, well, in Wisconsin, that was true. But he hasn't done it in the NFL yet to this point. But a lot of people know how talented he is. What he preaches about Rex Ryan, takes all the philosophies from Rex Ryan, one of his really disciples, of what he was able to do in those Rex Ryan's defenses, developing players like Keanu Benton and Nick Herbig. And there's a ton of examples of really highly successful players on this. And I'm really excited to see what he does in the 3-4 system that he basically runs, but it's going to be versatile. It's not going to just be run out there in a base 3-4 and see what happens. Vance Joseph last year, didn't just run a lot of 3-3-5. There's a lot of different formations that he did run that wasn't just go line up in 3-4 base and need just big thumping middle linebackers going forward. So that is something to always remember, that's not necessarily what the Bills are going to get from a 3-4 aggressive style of defense and how this is going to be developed. And it's just been, I think, a really good. Joe Brady has proven that he can go and get coordinators. He's not scared by young upstart coaches. He's not scared by some experience. I think he's done a couple of things that Sean McDermott started to shy away from kind of late in his tenure, let's say, with what he was able to do here from a perspective of like coaching hires and maybe playing it safe with Bobby Babbage. Bobby Babbage was a disaster. Love Bobby Babbage, the guy. Love the way he spoke. Was a really good guy in the community. A lot of good things about Bobby Babbage, but he just wasn't a very good coordinator, losing his play calling throughout the year, losing third down play calls defensively. He just wasn't exactly a good hire. He might be a really good positional coach in this league, and he's going to go, Green Bay to do his thing, but ultimately just wasn't ready for a DC role at this stage on this experience. A couple of really cool things that have come out from this as we kind of look through what are some of the instant reactions from how we're seeing this hire to go. Right. Like exactly what I was saying. I don't want to consider Leonhard a first time head coach head DC just because it feels like he's been one for over a decade. Even coaches like McDermott were copying him. So honest, NFL's never been more confident in a first timer. We also have Jim Leonhard, should be defensive coordinator in the NFL. Cool. But that was from 2019, September 28, 2019, from someone well-respected like Nate Tice. But that's quite impressive that back in the day, he was called out to be the next thing. And now he's the defensive coordinator of the Buffalo Bills. And I liked, football stats guy, stick to the model. He makes a really good analytical platform that judges GMs. Actually has general manager Brandon Beane as the second best drafter. If you should go ahead and check out his model, but also which is really cool is, they're in a fantastic position, even though it doesn't feel like it. It could be the best thing to happen to guys like Rousseau, Bernard, and Oliver. So is that true? Go check out his thread on what he sees in some draft prospects that he thinks could fit the Bills scheme. But really greatly written thread on how he envisions it and what it means for Oliver, Rousseau, and Hoyt. There's definitely some strengths with Bernard and Rousseau and Oliver and Hoyt. I mean, I think there's a really good base on what the Bills are going to be able to do in this new aggressive 3-4 style defense. So if everybody could do me a huge favor, let me know what you feel about this. Sound off in the comment section. Let me know what you feel about the Jim Leonhard hire. Also, let me know where you're watching from today. That's always an amazing thing to see. Send in where you're chatting in from today. But let us know in the comment section what you think of Joe Brady's first week. Started off with a pretty to really good press conference, depending on where you stand on the fence. Pretty good offensive coordinator hire. I thought as much as you could have, a really solid offensive line coach hire. We also had one of the biggest fish in the market wanted by the Chargers, wanted by the Ravens. Maybe they weren't willing to give up what the Bills are willing to give up for Jim Leonhard in terms of play calling and personnel decisions, and ultimately chose another win for the Bills over the Ravens, getting Jim Leonhard over in Buffalo over the Baltimore Ravens. So that's always super cool to see from that perspective. But as we kind of think about this holistically for a second, Bills had a really good week. And I know the letting McDermott press conference go, everyone was like, well, and then they hired Brady, and everybody was like, oh, it's all going to be the same. Bobby Babbitt is going to get promoted. Ryan Nielsen's going to get promoted. Ronald Curry's going to get promoted. Those things didn't happen. It's a new day. The Bills went out and made an aggressive style decision to overhaul what is going on within the locker room and with what they deem to be personnel. And then we have Brandon Beane as well saying he's not going to shy away from being aggressive. Does he go out and get a Justin Jefferson for this offense? Does he supplement Justin Jefferson with the likes of a Romeo Doubs or a lesser to an extent Christian Kirk, who we obviously know is really good friends with Josh Allen? There are plenty of decisions that could mean no more Samuel. I don't think any more Josh Palmer if he's traded. The Bills can have some cap relief that way. Do they utilize some of these void years? So there's a lot to go over from here on out with some off-season talk, some cap talk, some free agency talk, some signing talk, and we'll break down void years. I'll get into a lot more of that to go through with in the future of our lives. But thank you so much for not only watching our live, check out the one most recently with Zeba and myself, and also for checking in on these breaking news live updates as they happen. So that's always appreciated from all of us. And lastly, Jeff Rodgers was signed as a special teams special teams coordinator. Has had really good special teams 2025. He was 30th, so he really struggled. He was been the assistant head coach. So he's a guy that knows personnel a little bit since 2019 and has seen some good special teams. Last year, not good, but that's usually what ends up getting you that turnover year. They had some personnel decisions, and I checked in with a source from Arizona who made me feel really good when he could have really just bashed Jeff Rodgers and basically said Rodgers was excellent. Depth took its toll on the roster and its impact this year on the unit. He'll rebound. It's a very solid hire. Probably just time for both parties to move on. Punt units have been really good. He always has good punters and knows how to win field position. That's something the Bills, in my opinion, were not good at last year. They got better at times, but I think that is a huge thing they were probably looking for between punt return and punt coverage. I think that the Bills were really looking for to really improve on the punt game in general when they do have to punt. That's really important to them because a punt's a turnover. So I think they really needed to increase that. And also the Bills were looking at Connor Senger, quarterback coach, really a pass game coordinator over there to come in and maybe coach with Josh Allen. And I was told that he would be a really good developmental coach for Brady as well. And that's a hot young name, 30-year-old name that could come in and be a quarterback coach and would really probably have some really good play structure if that ends up working out. A name that's interested by the Bills and the Packers to go ahead and make that move. So we'll stay here for some of these final coaching hires. And I still think the Bills have a chance to hire one more final vet OC, a vet name to the coaching staff that would take the assistant head coaching job and ultimately be that consultant and like kind of Leslie Frazier in Seattle kind of thing. Who could that be? Who ends up not getting a DC or OC job this cycle? Could it be a Joe Lombardi that we know has ties to most people on the staff? Could it be a Raheem Morris? Could it be there's a lot of different names that could take up positions on a higher level that maybe doesn't have a coordinator responsibility, but could be an advisor and a trusted confidant for Joe Brady. So I believe that is still to come. We'll see what the quarterback coach looks like. We'll see if they go on run game, pass game coordinators there too. Probably in the name, could be Austin Gund, someone still on the staff, a Rob Boris, and so there's still a couple of names that could still be DJ Mangus. That's always been with Brady. So there's still a couple of names still left, and Kelly Skipper, the running back coach, for the Bills to make a decision on. But we really appreciate you, as always. Smash that like button. Really appreciate it. Let us know. Sound off in the comment section. Let us know what you think of the Jim Leonhard signing. Bills nailed it out of the park. A really huge decision. The Bills get dangerous here today and enjoy a really fun offseason, and it's not going to stay stagnant. The Bills are going to make moves. We'll let you know all about them as the offseason progresses. For now, stay tuned to the Bills Roundtable.